In today's video, we're going to be painting up Trinket from Critical Role by Steamforged Miniatures. Okay, so to start off Trinket here, all I've done is I've primed him in black all over, trying to get into all the nooks and crannies with the primer. So, starting off with our first colour, we're going to start off with charred brown from Vallejo. And with the charred brown, we're just going to be hitting, obviously, all of the fur, covering all the Trinket. Now I have thinned this down with just a little bit of water so we can get in between all that nice fur texture that he has on him. You might also too, while you're doing this miniature, just before you prime, you might want to clean up some of the mold lines and stuff on here. Now, mine had a couple of small mold lines that I just cleaned up with X-Acto knife, just running the edge along of it very carefully, just peeling off the mold line and giving that nice finish, and it's not going to stick out so much when we paint it like now. So just coming over back to the painting now, we're just making sure we giving good coverage to all those areas, like on the ears and just underneath the belly, those nice easy to miss areas. And then once this is all done and dry, I'm going to come back over with a second coat to just give that smooth finish on the paint job. Okay, so now we have all that base color of the fur down. What we're going to do now is come in with some fur brown from Army Painter. And we'll be using the fur brown to just be doing a dry brush over top of all that fur. So I've just got my dry brush here, which is actually an old makeup brush that should make really good dry brushes. Especially for soft tip dry brushes, if you're after that, they're really good for that type of thing. So we just want to cover everywhere over in this nice fur brown. Now the fur brown has a bit of a orangey color through it, so it's going to give us that little bit of difference in color from that charred brown, which is a very dark, deep brown. So making sure we go everywhere on this, being pretty rough with it, and making sure we cover all the areas, especially like underneath and that as well. I'm not going to be focusing too hard. I'm just going to be doing a little dry brush on the underneath side, so that's underneath the belly and on the inside of the arms, because we want it for mainly being where the sunlight hits. But we just want that little bit of color down there too, so it matches in a little bit, so it doesn't stick out too much. Okay, so now we have that nice fur brown on here. We're now going to add another layer of brown highlights, which is leather brown, which is going to be a really light brown color. And you can see that fur brown is giving it a nice orangey tint over the whole miniature. So just coming in now, and this time we're only going to be using the dry brushing technique over top of the areas where the sun would naturally hit. So we're not bothering with going any of the light brown on the belly or on the inside of the legs there. So giving it a good, nice, rough covering. Really trying to focus on the areas where we want a little bit lighter. So I paid a little bit more attention to the face, since the sun is going to be naturally hitting on there, and we want to get some of Trinket's little bit of expression that he has on the miniature. So really concentrating on those sorts of areas when we're doing the dry brushing. Okay, so now we've done all the dry brushing steps. What we're going to be doing now is coming in with some agrax earthshade, and we're going to be giving a wash over the entirety of everywhere we've just painted with the browns. So we want a good, nice coverage over all that fur. And the agrax earthshade, what it's going to do is going to bring down all those fur colors and tie them together, as well as adding in a nice dark deep brown in between all those little gaps in the fur that you can see there, where you can see each of the pieces of fur are nicely individually pretty much sculpted. You can really see that fur texture on there, and this is where the washes really come in to their strongest effect here, is doing that. So just paying some good attention to all those areas where we've got that nice texture. Now if it does start pulling up, like you can see here when I first laid it down and it started pulling up underneath the metal plate there, all you want to do is just come back in with the brush, just a little bit empty of the wash, and then push it around a bit further, and you will be able to spread that wash a lot thinner, and you won't have any of that pulling issue. Okay, so now we've got that agrax earthshade on there and all dried up. We're going to now come in with some Vallejo black. It's just standard black. Any black will do for this. And what we're going to be doing is just picking out some of the details on Trinket here. So there's nice big black eyes. We want to be painting the inside of the ear, the nose, and the claws with this. Now, I'm using a nice fine tip brush for this, especially for the eyes. You're going to need a nice fine tip brush to try really get in there and get into those eye sockets, because if we can help it, we don't want to paint back over the areas where we're just washing that for now. So trying to come in. But remember, it's not a big deal. You can always come back and paint back over it and then just wash it a little bit later. It'll just take a little bit longer. But the best bit is to try and be as precise as you can at this stage. It's a good practice, especially on a miniature like this, where the details aren't all over the place. There's a few key details, so you can really practice your fine brush skills with this. Okay, so with that is all the main part of Trinket complete, and now we're going to be moving on to the metal. So starting off with oily steel for his nice armor. We're going to give a full covering with this oily steel. Now, I like this oily steel because it's actually just a little bit darker than a normal gun metal, and it has that sort of dirtier look, and Trinket's a nice battle-hardened bear who always gets into fights. Although I'm going to be making his armor nice and shiny, this is also a good alternative where you can have that dark and sort of worn look with the oily steel as well. So you can go either way. That's why I chose this color. But for this paint job in particular, I'm going to give him nice shiny armor like it's brand new. So starting off with the oily steel, we just want to cover nice even coat over all of that armor. So once this is done, you can see I've left a lot of streak marks in here, but that's okay because we're going to be coming in with a second coat after the first coat is dried as well. And of course, don't forget to paint up his helmet there as well. Okay, so now we've got all the metal parts of his armor complete. We're going to come back in now with some black, and we're going to be using the black to be doing all the leather working on Trinket. Now, I might have just forgotten to mention, just before when we're doing the metal working, I also painted up the belt clips and that he has holding his armor together as well in that oily steel as well. So don't forget about that when you're doing it. But if you want to do it the opposite way around, where you paint the whole leather black first and then just come over with steel over top, is also another viable option. And also don't forget to make sure that you follow the straps all the way down to the bottom. He actually has a chest piece on him as well, so just underneath the bottom there he has a chest piece too, so don't forget to paint that in the oily steel as well. Okay, so now with all that oily steel nice and dry and the leather working done, we're going to come in now with some nuln oil. Now you know this is my favorite. If you've seen any of my other videos, it's my always #1 go-to wash when we're doing it over metal. I just love the effect it gives off, regardless of the metal that it is. I just love the effect. Now in this instance, I'm placing it on with a nice big bristled brush so I can get a lot of wash in there, since we've got really big flat areas as well. So I want to get a lot of wash to avoid that streaking. Now it's not going to be too big a deal because we're going to be using a lot of this wash to enhance the shadows more than anything else. So we'll just want to make sure we get a good coverage. So everywhere as much as you can. Don't worry too much about it sort of streaking in places, because I'll probably go over this with just 2 coats because I want to get this really darkened down. Okay, so now we've got the nuln wash all nice and dry. We're going to come back in with oily steel now. And you can see I've made the oily steel really dark by adding in that wash. And so what I'm going to be doing now is coming back over with the oily steel, and we're just going to be placing it on the areas where the sun is naturally going to hit. And you can see my camera going out of focus, so making it a little bit harder to see what I'm doing here. But what I'm doing is I'm just going to be leaving in that nuln oil wash that we've got just in the shadows and in the cracks between the armor, or I should say where the plates meet each other more than the cracks. It's not cracked armor, it's nice and pristine. So just as you can see here, I'm being very careful to not get it all the way in. And while I'm painting this on, you can see it's quite a stark difference. You can really see that oily steel I'm applying, especially right now. But don't worry about that. It'll dull down and tie in together once that paint dries. So just being really aware that we want to keep all that nuln oil in the shadow and keep painting the oily steel where that sun's going to naturally hit. Okay, so now we've got all that done. I'm going to come in now with some chainmail silver. I'm going to be using chainmail silver to be doing basically all of the edging on Trinket's armor here. So going to be going around just hitting the edges. You can see I've got a slightly smaller brush to do this as well, and I'm just hitting it with more the side of the brush than I am with the actual tip, so I can really get a good edge on it, and it's the easiest way to pick out edges on armor. Now it's a little bit hard to see here on the camera, but once it's all finished you'll really see that little bit of brighter color is going to really stick out against that area, as well as I'm being careful to avoid anywhere that we've got that nuln oil still in there too. And then when you've got that, you're feeling a bit confident, you can actually add a little bit of this shinier color we've got here onto the highest point. So you can see here on the back of Trinket's back where the sun's naturally going to hit. I'm just sort of dry brushing it on. I'm not exactly dry brushing it on. I'm just sort of layering it on with some light layers to really get that shine effect in there on those high points. And now with that complete, we've basically completed Trinket. So we're just going to come back in now with some Vallejo black. So any black that you've got, any of the black we've just been using, and we're just going to be painting up that base to give it a nice cohesive and clean look, because we don't want all that messy paint left on the base. Now, you of course at this time add any type of basing you want to there. If you want to Trinket in a nice forest or a desert or swampland, whatever sort of thing you want. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple, so I can let you guys pick whatever you want to do with it. And I'm just making these more of like a standardized piece for anyone who's learning this type of stuff. And with that, we have finished painting up Trinket from Critical Role from Steamforged Game Miniatures. And you can see we only used a very few amount of colors to paint up Trinket here, and it's really, really effective. So I think adding in just those couple of extra colors of the browns and adding in that highlighted detail with those silvers has really brought Trinket out to his full, nice, glorified armor. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along or you just enjoy watching me paint up some cool miniatures. So I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.